Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss another cautionary tale about voting for governments whose central offer is to release the face-eating leopards. How many people cheered the idea without ever thinking that their own face might look tasty to those leopards as well? But this is the problem when people think the politicians promising epic levels of cruelty don't realise that they are the target. They somehow think they're special until it's too late. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So this initially is the story of a Trump supporting family who now regrets their vote. And when I say Trump supporting, I don't just mean Trump voting. Plenty voted for Trump because they were really voting Republican and just sort of hoped he wouldn't actually do any of the crazy stuff he promised he would. Still blows my mind to think there were Republicans, even in Congress, some of the most senior politicians in the country, who thought it was all just bluster and Trump would calm down in his second term. Did they not realise how desperate he was to avoid legal consequences, not just for 4 more years, but for the rest of his life? But anyway, this particular family were reported to be actual Trump supporters, and specifically supporters of his policy of mass deportation of immigrants. It revolves around a Canadian national, Cynthia Oliveira. So she's lived in America from the age of 10. She's had 3 children there who are, of course, US citizens. Her husband is a US citizen. Her husband seems to have been a big supporter of this policy of mass deportations without ever seeming to realise that his wife, an immigrant, might just become a target. And now she has. Federal authorities are now actively trying to remove her from the country. But I didn't think the leopards would eat my face. This one is particularly insane. See, you may imagine that what I'm talking about here is the family thought she'd be safe because she's got formal settled status or something, right? No. In fact, she seems to have drawn attention to herself by applying for permanent residency. So her family voted for Trump, specifically supporting Trump's policy of mass deportation of so-called undocumented migrants, knowing that their wife and mother was such a migrant. And now they're basically saying they didn't realise this would happen and want their vote back. Her idiot husband actually said that. I want my vote back, he said. Mate, you should ask for your brain back. His wife was going through the process of getting legal status under the Democrats. Knowing she was technically in the US illegally, he still voted for the guy who was not just promising to deport her. He specifically supported that policy. And it came as a surprise to him when federal agents began to deport her. And this is not just yet another case of a Trump supporter regretting that support to go along with the farmers, federal workers and others who've been thrown under the bus when they decided to vote for a convicted felon who was primarily motivated by avoiding prison. This should act as a cautionary tale everywhere, including in Britain. I've said it before. Do not vote for people who promise to shit on other people because they mean you. Now, with any government, there are winners and losers, and sometimes you don't like the fact that they're picking on that group to be the losers, right? But there are some parties who promise to help people, and there are some parties who promise to shit on people. Don't vote for the second group. In the UK, the emphasis is also on immigrants, but it's a distraction. Reform UK and increasingly the Conservatives say we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. These are our basic human rights enshrined in law. And why do their supporters agree we should abandon the human rights of 68 million people living in the UK? What? Because of the small, tiny, in fact, number of foreign criminals who've committed serious crimes that we sometimes struggle to deport? We're going to surrender the human rights of everyone for the sake of a few dozen people, aren't we? Let me tell you something. These privileged spivs who pretend to be on the side of the people, like Nigel Farage, like Boris Johnson, like Donald Trump, these people who live a life of luxury, the likes of which their supporters could not taste even for a single day, let alone a lifetime, do not care about a few dozen or a few hundred or even a few thousand foreigners having their human rights removed. They don't make money out of that. They care about taking the human rights of 68 million because that could be very profitable for them. Even in America, some who support the mass deportations but haven't been personally affected yet, they may be pleased that Trump is doing what he said he would. But his target is not immigrants, undocumented or otherwise. It's everyone else. Trump is targeting those most vulnerable first. First they came for the communists. Do people learn nothing from history? I mean, let's just think about three types of person in America. So you've got Donald Trump. He's a person of sorts. You've a billionaire born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Incredibly privileged upbringing. He's never not been insanely rich. Then you have what's called an undocumented migrant. Not usually true. They will be documented. But let's say no permanent residency rights. Then you've got a US citizen, American born and bred, and a MAGA supporter. Now let's consider that MAGA supporting US citizen. Who are they most like? Donald Trump or the migrant? Because let me tell you, that MAGA supporter may think there's a world of difference between them and the migrant, but that's not the case. You basically live the same lives. You do the same jobs, live in the same types of homes, go to the same grocery stores, same shoe shops, same pubs or bars if you must, sit in the same seats for the baseball games. You don't go to any of the same places Trump does, and Trump doesn't go to any of the same places you do, except when he's grubbing for your vote, which he no longer needs to do, so you'll never see him again. They have plenty in common, the migrant and the MAGA supporter. But what does the MAGA supporter have in common with Trump? They wear the same hat, that's it. Now, I'll tell you something. Trump cannot tell the difference between the MAGA supporter and the migrant. You're both the same to him. So, of course, he'll treat you both the same. Same applies in Britain. The struggling worker in a rundown coastal town, say, has got more in common with the refugee coming on a boat than they do Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch. They were all privately educated, all spent their lives never, ever for a second having to worry about paying the bills. No shopping at Farm Foods or Heron for them. No deciding what to have for dinner by seeing what's in the discount aisle. No cutting out food coupons for them. No wrapping themselves up in a blanket when the cost of energy is too high. Just crank up the lights and the thermostat whenever needed. And although the typical reform supporter may not see the similarity with the migrants they've been taught to hate, you're basically living very similar lives. Just as in America, you're living in the same areas, going to the same shops, doing the same work. Farage and Jenrick, they can see the difference. They've got nothing in common with you. And they see nothing in common with you. The struggling reform supporter is the same as a migrant. You're both economic units for them. And it'll be way easier to extract more value out of you if you don't have human rights. I just hope people in Britain look at what's happening to America, because their human rights are supposed to be enshrined in the Constitution. But Trump is weakening that Constitution. I do hope America resists and pushes back. But where Trump does get to exercise his will, and he is winning so far, I hope people elsewhere look at what's happening and say, yeah, we don't want that here. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.